Baruch atah
Adonai
Eloheinu
Eloheinu
Asher Kiddushanu b'mitzvotav
La'asot
La'asot b'divrei Torah.
Torah, which is a blessing. Just thanking God for the privilege of dealing with la'asok, to deal with what the Torah is trying to say. So that's where we are, and that's great. Last night at Wilshire, there was a beautiful not farewell to Don Gurney. That's what it was. It was a not farewell. And for those of you who would like, I just happen to know that if you want to send a note to Don wishing him well, that would be very well received. Okay? And this is the time in which it would be well received. So, I mean, those of us who had a chance to talk with him last night, fine. But, okay, I'm prejudiced. I love the guy. But in any event, it would be a good time to send a note if you are so inclined. Wednesday, August 23rd, noon, is our next current events program. And since Risa and I celebrated our 60th anniversary yesterday, believe me, I have learned in my flesh that I am in charge of nothing. So a group of you came forward, and I'm sure it was meant to be nice, but in any way, imposed upon me your desire to have the current events program continue. So I went to Susan Nannis, and Hannah was very supportive, and we are continuing. So we will be continuing every other week as per schedule, okay? And I have to tell you that one of the reasons I caved into your demands is that I love the conversations we have. So in any event, like September 6th is the next one, and it'll be every other week, and we'll keep to a schedule. But that's fun. So there you go. You are in charge. Next item is that we are going to have a visitor today around o'clock, and Steve, 10 o'clock at Los Angeles time. We are going to have Mitch Dorff visit us. Mitch is the #1 premier chauffeur blower in the world. He is just fabulous. And he is, of course, the senior chauffeur blower for Wilshire. And it is customary for the shofar to be sounded during the month of Elul, leading up to Rosh Hashanah. This is Elul, Rosh Hashanah is coming. And I said, hey, Mitch, would you be willing to show up and sound shofar for the Chevra Torah? So he's going to do that. And what's going to be a little bit touchy, the moment he shows up around 10 o'clock, whatever we're doing, I'm going to break for Mitch, okay? So that he can sound shofar and then go about whatever else he's doing. But I am thrilled. What I'm thrilled most of all about is the moment I asked, he said an immediate yes. Okay? No sales necessary. What he didn't offer, and I won't say this later, is to come at 9 o'clock and study Torah with us. But look, I am not going to let that go. Okay. Cindy, do you have calendar stuff?
Yeah. Well, this afternoon, we have an unofficial board tour at the Hammer Museum at 1 o'clock. Anyone is welcome to join us. It's a free docent tour. Next Friday, we're doing Shabbat dinner at Froman's, 6 o'clock. Everyone is welcome. If you want to come, just leave me a note in the chat, and we just need to have seats for you. It's a no host and they give us separate checks. And then next Saturday, which is the 26th, we're going to see Golda at Century City, 11:45.
Sunday.
Welcome to join us. We're going to have lunch in the food court afterwards. You just have to buy your own ticket to Golda, and we'd love to have you join us.
Super. Okay, that's all, huh? Well, it's, a quiet time in August. You only have 17 activities. That's great. Jim is not here yet. I don't see Jim. Okay. I want to point out that on Friday evening, September 8th, it's going to be a regular service, but there's also a congregational meeting kind of wrapped up in the service. So I just want to mention that to you. It's a good thing. I mean, just to kind of hear where the congregation's going, what's happening. So Friday evening, September 8th, there's going to be a congregational meeting wrapped up with the Friday evening service. So checking in, and checking in is going to be fun. Hi, Mara. Hi, Tamara. This is it. You can hear, I will stop kvetching, okay? I have no more complaints to make about the CCR Press. The book is out. It's physical. It actually exists. It's called Reforming Judaism, and something I worked on with Professor Leah Hockman, and getting nice reviews, actually. And that's kind of fun. And I do want to say, this is self-serving, but not for profit. If you are members of a chavurah or any kind of study group, and you would like to have a session with me to talk about the book, no charge. Yeah, I would be very happy.
Does sisterhood count?
Totally.
Well, Reese is a member. Maybe we could arrange something through her.
Which is the way my life is conducted. Yes, I understand. Yeah, Cindy, yeah, sure.
Okay.
Organization, and there are two reasons. One, why do I get involved in trying to produce a book? It's because I want to get ideas out there into the world. And so one of the ways to do it is to make myself available. The only thing I will do during those visits is promote the sale of the book, okay? And indicate to people that if they want. Steve, what? I can't hear you. You're muted, Steve.
What if you would like a signed copy, but you live in Detroit?
That you had to interrupt me to get, right? Yes, Steve, the next time we see each other, you will be able to have me sign personally your purchased copy of the book. I get that would be fantastic. But anyway, I think it's okay. And the only reason I just got it was because the initial rush of purchases made the CCR Press choose between sending books to those who just bought them or sending a free copy to the person who put the book together. I came in second. But there it is, and I'm excited, okay? But I'll be happy to discuss with anybody, set a time to meet with your group, whatever that group would happen to be. Yesterday, checking in our 60th anniversary, Risa and I went to a favorite place in Malibu and had lunch. And Risa, why am I blocking on the name? They tell you age is a significant thing here. Is she gone? Okay. Oh, Paradise Cove. That's what it is. It came back. Paradise Cove, which, we sat on the beach and just had a glorious lunch privately together, quiet. And tomorrow night we're having the family thing, and just, it's awesome. It's just great. Okay. Maya is here. Maya, or is Maya there, Risa?
Yes.
Okay, hi, Maya. When do you leave us, Maya? When do you head back?
September.
What
Early
day?
September.
Okay, so we just have a little bit of time left with you. Anything else in terms of checking in terms of what's going on in your lives? Okay, I see Donna checking in.
Thank you, Rabbi. I want to thank you for your beautiful presentation of your gorgeous wife. 60 years.
Okay,
Wow. I've been to Paradise Cove and I sat there next to a picture of Marilyn Monroe and they're like doing a double take. But I just think that's the greatest place in the world. That's where Marilyn used to get photographed at on the beach. And thank you. Thank you for
okay,
lovely racing. Bye.
we're going to cut that, Donna, because we're
Okay.
just checking in. That's great. That's
Thank
great.
you so much. And I'm looking for an apartment.
Oh, yes, that's even better. Anything else? Now, do we have anyone here who is here for the first time? Who is, okay, and I knew that actually, Susan. So Susan, could you just say hello to our fabulous, actually true, fabulous group of people and tell us a bit about who you are.
Unmute. Okay. Yeah, I'm Susan Schmidt. I live in Valencia and I belong to the Temple Beth Ami up here, but I wanted to join also Wilshire Boulevard Temple since Rebecca is a member and then my mom was confirmed there. So there's kind of a history and I've gone to services with Rebecca and I really like the services. So I decided to join and expand my Jewish horizons. So I really like the synagogue there. So, yeah.
That's great. Welcome, Rukaba. Welcome. We're really thrilled and happy to have you here. It's a shame you weren't at services last night. You talk about expanding Jewish horizons. They had such a fabulous dessert tray that there were a lot of Jewish horizons were expanded last night.
I'm sorry I missed.
Yeah, it was unbelievable. I'm going to have to reduce my Jewish horizon. Okay, we're going to get started with our material. We're turning to Deuteronomy chapter 17, verse 8, page 1295. 1295. I do have to admit that Tamara shared with me a family picture that she sent out, and it's totally secret, and I have no right to mention it. But there was just a picture of Tamara with the books she has written. And the picture was of 2 stacks of books like this. And then as I try to talk about how glorious it is to have my 3rd book out there, yes, I felt diminished, but it was a beautiful picture. It was great. Okay, page 1295. Okay. This is actually, today is dedicated to the lawyers in our midst. And if you are attorneys, this one's for you. So we are on 1295, verse 8. Steve, are you there? As an attorney of note, or a recovering attorney, as sometimes people put it, please read.
I actually have a different translation. My reading is, if beyond understanding by you is a matter for judgment between impure blood and pure blood, between innocent verdict and guilty verdict, between contamination, leprous affliction, and uncontaminated affliction, matters of disputes in your city gates, you shall rise up and you shall ascend to the place that select will Hashem your God.
Okay, whose translation is that, Steve?
This is the interlineal Schottenstein.
The interlineal what? I didn't hear.
Schottenstein.
Well, Schottenstein is from Columbus, Ohio, and what do you expect?
But it reads funny because it doesn't, unlike the reading we usually use, it doesn't reform the sentence the way we would do it in English.
Right.
The syntax so that you can understand the translation of each word. But
Right.
you can still get the gist of what it's saying. It's setting up a bunch of dichotomies and saying you should bring them forward for a verdict.
Exactly. So we have here, by the way, Schottenstein, I think, made their money in a very wonderful way. They bought damaged train loads of goods, like when something happens when you're shipping, and then they would reship, and from that you become billionaires. That's really not, it's cool. If a case is too baffling for you, whatever, homicide, civil law, assault, dispute in your courts, what are you supposed to do when the local setup for judges can't handle it? It's whatever it is. You shall promptly repair to the place that the eternal your God will have chosen. What does that mean in English? Promptly repair to the place where
It means go where the Kohanim are.
you go to the place where the Supreme Court, not as an organization, but the Supreme Court sits, and that is in Jerusalem. So if you have any legal matter, whatever, homicide, civil, assault, whatever, you go to the place. I always wonder why people come up with language, you shall promptly repair to the place. Okay. That the eternal your God will have chosen, and appear before the Levitical priest or the magistrate in charge at the time and present your problem. When they have announced to you the verdict in the case, you shall carry out the verdict from the place that God has chosen, observing scrupulously all the instructions you get, act in accordance with the instructions and the ruling handed down to you. You must not deviate either to the right or the left. Okay? Should either side disregard the priest charged with serving there, then the eternal your God, or the eternal your God or the magistrate. So if you disregard God or the judge, I like that. If you disregard either God or the judge, that party shall die. That's kind of, it cuts down on recidivism. If you do this thing once, you're dead. Thus you will sweep out the evil from Israel, and the people will hear and be afraid and will not act presumptuously again. There's a lot here. There is a lot here. What's going on? Tell me about the legal system in ancient Palestine. What is being set up here? What do you have?
No man is above the law.
Okay, no one is above the law. Certainly true. Certainly true. And anything else? There's just a bunch here. Okay, Sukasa.
The fact that you have to have two witnesses is a positive step, that it diminishes false testimony by somebody, because you have two. That doesn't mean there can't be collusion, but it's definitely a positive step at that time in history.
The two witness thing is actually right before this section, and it sets up some pretty interesting things, like in the case of capital punishment, that if you have witnesses that testify against a person in a capital punishment case, and the person is convicted and then needs to be put to death, capital punishment needs to be put to death, the first people to throw the stones to kill the malefactor must be the witnesses. So if you're going to testify against someone in a court in a capital case and the person is convicted, then the witnesses must feel the impact of their testimony. Very interesting. I like in verse, and obviously two witnesses. There is a wonderful example, which is, I'm sure, hyperbole, but as a rabbi who's preached for more than 50 years, I know hyperbole. Picture this scene. There is a single room hut in the middle of a clearing. One person is in the hut, and he is a person running from the law. There is a circle of people around the hut, and they are holding hands like Red Rover. They're holding hands. No one can get through. And then a person appears at the edge of the circle with a knife, visible. He enters the Red Rover structure, goes into the hut, and shortly thereafter, the person in the hut is found stabbed to death. Can you convict that person who went through the Red Rover line of a capital crime?
Nobody saw it. There's no witness.
Nobody saw it. No witness. In other words, even though the circumstance really mitigates against any other option, that person, no. And there's another reason. No one saw it, because you need two witnesses. I mean, there's not even one, but you need two witnesses. A matter can only stand if there are two witnesses. The next thing is, Jewish law demands that the potential perpetrator of a capital crime must be warned in advance what the penalty for a capital crime is. So that since the people in the Red Rover circle did not say to the potential perp with a knife, what you are thinking of doing is forbidden, this, that, and the other is the penalty, that person cannot be the subject himself, herself of a capital crime. It can be punished in other kinds of ways, but cannot be put to death for that crime. Jewish law is pretty strict on that. And I love it. I'm going to get to your comments. If a case is too baffling for you, that's very real. Some cases are really baffling. And if it's too baffling, you go to a higher court. And in this case, the higher court is with the Levitical priests, the Kohanim Leviim in Jerusalem. Okay, now I'm going to take comments. This is fun. Larry.
So I read that language a little bit differently, because it struck me that there really isn't a case that's too baffling for the local court to decide, unless you don't trust the local court. I mean, maybe there was corruption in the local courts or favoritism, because maybe they were, people from one family deciding issues about a different local family. So in those circumstances, you would want to go to Jerusalem or someplace else where there was a less partial decision maker.
Thanks. And of course, we call that change of venue or whatever else in our system. And you know that within the charges, indictments against former President Trump, there is everyone is talking about, where is the jury likely to be less responsive, more responsive, whatever. And venue matters. And
Mhm.
yes, that is certainly a reasonable addition to the text. I see Howard.
Oh, well, I was going to bring something up about regarding translation, but it's a little off the topic, I guess. So
Okay, we'll hold with that.
I'll take it under consideration.
Okay. Sukasa.
Two questions. One, where does it say that the perpetrator has to be told beforehand?
Not here.
So
a
it's
matter-
after this time.
Oh, yeah. As a matter of fact, what I described to you is Talmudic.
Okay.
The rabbis did that because they tried to put flesh on the bones of a law. And that's not unusual. It's great you have a constitution, but how does it work in this case, in that case, in this case? So they went that way. The Torah is insistent upon two witnesses. And the nature of the witnessing and giving of the warning, that's rabbinic.
Second question is, if it's in the Talmud, when you say people have to know the law, is this, if it's in the Talmud, it then becomes law that everybody's supposed to know, or how do they receive notice of that?
Well, that's such a really important question, Sue. What you have here is a mandate to every one of you. The rabbi has the final word, okay? That's it. So, well, okay, we'll move away from that reason.
I thought it was the rabbi's wife.
Well, yeah, that's true too. Okay, so in American jurisprudence, and I am not a lawyer, no the son of a lawyer, but the father-in-law of many. In American jurisprudence, there has to be a level of awareness of the law. There has to be. And if it comes to be that you are unaware and it can be proven, there's a mens rea, whatever your own set of mind, you have no idea this is a violation. That could be a mitigating factor. You have to have an awareness. Secondly, in court, and again, forgive me, I know I'm not a lawyer, but if the law had never been promulgated, it can't be enforced. Does that sound right? Are the lawyers here okay with me on this? If
Close.
Close? Okay.
Well, there are lots of laws you don't need to know, and you can still be responsible for them, that they don't require that kind of knowledge.
Okay. And I'm going to say that probably in stuff that's serious, you do. And serious is, of course,
For serious crimes, generally you need some level of knowledge or intent, yes.
The question I was raising, Steve, is if a legislative body passes a law in secret and never promulgates it, that would be a reason not to find someone guilty of violating a law that the legislative body never promulgated.
By definition, that's not even possible in this country.
And this, well, yeah.
They can't vote on a law and have a bill or whatever and not have it published. It's published automatically.
I get you. Okay. But within the Talmudic structure, it has to be promulgated and it has to go forth now.
But it doesn't mean people have to read it.
That is true. Now, in Jewish law, Sukasa, I haven't thought about this clearly, so I'm speaking slowly. One way for a law to become dominant in a community is for the central legislative body of that community to adopt it. That reflects when the people are all living in Palestine. What happens when we have diaspora. We have significant communities everywhere. And what happens, especially during the medieval period and beyond, is that local rabbis may make decisions. And the power of those decisions coincides with the power of that rabbi's reputation. So if Rabbi X, and that Rabbi X has an 80% recognition level as a great scholar in an area, and Rabbi X makes a ruling, that ruling is binding. Okay? That's another way. So one is a legislative, one is by power of the person who said it, who taught it, who made it legislatively possible. Now, excuse me, that means that in community A or region A, the law may be this way, and region B, the law may be that way. And there is a whole literature, you know it actually, right? Of Shelot and Shuvot, the responsa literature. And the responsa literature is a collection of decisions made by various rabbis. So if Joe Schwartz has a whole set of decisions and binds them together in a book, his responsa, excuse me. And if his reputation grows and grows, the reputation of that volume of decision transcends boundaries. So we have a different way, okay? The Shelot and Shuvot, and one of the, my father-in-law was a dentist. And when someone first said in one of my classes at the Hebrew College, a decisor would make a decision, I thought it was referring to a tooth, okay? But it apparently wasn't. A decisor is the rabbi who answers the question, makes the decision. And so you can read postings online, and you'll find a guy like Moshe Feinstein. Moshe Feinstein was a world famous decisor. He published loads of books, Shelot and Shuvot, responsa literature, and in so many cases, if you said that Feinstein said it, it governed, okay? And it's like that. The Reform movement publishes and has published collections of decisions by the responsa committee of the Central Conference of American Rabbis. It has no binding impact whatsoever. In a liberal movement, the responsa is published and they become serious suggestions. But no one would go back to volume 12 and say, it says here on this that this is what we do, so we must. It becomes not law, but suggestion. The conservative movement has a responsa committee, and that responsa committee publishes the majority opinion and the minority opinion. So if you weren't confused before, you are able to see two opposing positions promoted by the responsa committee of your movement. And by the way, very serious questions, including officiating of mixed marriages and handling conversions, and just a whole variety of things, not small matters. But they give both sides and then leave it to the people. It was a long answer to your question, but it's important. How do these things go from a court decision to becoming law? I'm going to move forward. Cindy.
So is this saying if you want to murder someone, all you have to do is make sure no one sees you do it and then you get off?
Would you please, Cindy, remember that this is being taped? And I do not want to be recorded saying, yeah, if you want to murder someone, this is the way to do it. No, I am not going to respond to that. But in real world application, if a person murders someone and there is no warning and not two witnesses, the ultimate punishment of capital punishment will not be applied. Other punishments will be applied, but not capital. In other words, you can't go to the number one premium punishment because you didn't follow all the requirements weren't met. This was part of a process, Cindy, to do away with capital punishment. And you know that within the Jewish legal system, and this is one of the great understandings of the flexibility of Jewish law, not the inflexibility that so many contemporary Orthodox rabbis hold to today. The flexibility of Jewish law goes to the extent of saying, yeah, there are 4 forms of capital punishment sanctified by God in the Torah, and we do our best to avoid all of them.
It's sort of like the stoning of a belligerent child, that they make it so it never happens, but they have it in there.
It's another example of the law is clear and then the law is circumvented because the ethical moral system evolves. And that's a great example. Okay, Harv and Mara, and then I'll go to Arthur.
So if I'm an observant Reform Jew and my religion tells me to behave in a certain way, that something is or is not legal, but my country's legal system is in opposition to that, how am I supposed to make a decision about how to behave? Or am I to simply decide to be an adherent of Spinoza and claim that these laws are only applicable to the ancient state of Israel and don't apply to me today?
You know, Mara, how happy I would be if any time a non-practicing Jew would say, I'm following the system of Spinoza. I would be really happy. You know, I might not be happy with the action, but my God, they're quoting Spinoza. I mean, that's great. Actually, I am smiling, and you know that's a sign that I know the answer. That's a standard thing. There is a standing in the Gemara, in the Talmud, that says Dina de Malchuta Dina. I'm going to loosely translate, civil law dominates. The law of the government is the law, Dina de Malchuta Dina. And that means that if there is something in your religious tradition which pushes you to do this, and there is the civil law of the country within which you live that says that, civil law, Dina de Malchuta Dina, the civil law dominates, and you may not use as a defense, my religion teaches me elsewise.
If that's the case, then when I stand on Yom Kippur and speak and think through what I have or have not done, do I repent for not following not following the dictates of my religion, even though you've said what you've just said?
First of all, the system of repentance, tshuva, requires more than a prayer on Yom Kippur. It requires repair of okay. I mean, you obviously know that. That's fine. I accept. I just want to mention it for everybody that if apologies are needed, apologies must be given. If repayment is needed, repayment has to happen. If confession to a civil crime is needed, you have to do that in the civil court. Yom Kippur will not wipe that out. Okay? So there's the system of tshuva, of repentance, is complicated and I think pretty effective. We don't have a confession system with a priest. Though I think it would be pretty interesting to be sitting in that booth and hearing what people are confessing, but that's peeping Tom. That's not really, we don't have that. So there is no human being that can forgive you for anything else you've done. Only God can offer the ultimate forgiveness, but to approach God, there are delineated steps. And it's not just, I'm praying on Yom Kippur. Far from it. Far from it. Did I answer your question?
I think you've answered my question. If I understand you to say that if, for instance, I did something in violation of Jewish law because civil law required that, then I must work my way through that, through teshuvah, to feel that I've satisfied what's expected of me. Does that make sense?
Yeah, well, tomorrow I'm not going to remember the exact Gemara, but there is a time when a king demanded, or not a king, the lead religious scholar in Palestine demanded that a religious scholar from Babylonia, Jewish, religious scholar from Babylonia, appear before him on the day that the Babylonian Jewish calendar said was Yom Kippur, but by the Palestinian calendar, it was the next day. You had a direct conflict, if you will. The Palestinian scholar was actually an authority in the country. It wasn't just casual like the teacher said. This was required. And the scholar from Babylonia went to the court. In Palestine, that was Dina de Machuta Dina. That's what governed. But the scholar was also violating his religious calendar, not a small matter, a big matter. Then that has to be addressed between God and the person who was forced to sin. And duress is certainly grounds for forgiveness.
May I ask a question, Rabbi?
Okay.
About law, about the ancient Jewish Talmudic law of ancient times and bloodline, ancestry, inheritance laws for women. What does the court do now if you know that you are related to someone and there's a trust fund and you want to, then there's no argument about the fund, but to get it done, how to prove it and to get it done, how do you go about it?
That's so interesting. And again, the lawyers in the group, you have to be loyal to the court system of your community or city or state or government, all of the above. There is a way not to live in an isolated community, which is, if you will, turning its back on the civil law of the country within which it finds itself. So there are cases right now, New York State, best example, in which the law is clear. Students have to have not just STEM, they have to have English and math and science and civil studies. And the yeshivot will not teach that. And so the lawsuits are from the state, which sends money to these religiously based schools, and the claim of those communities that if you force us to change how we teach, you are attacking our freedom of religion. I'm not going to go into the details, other than to say it's so not simple that there are multiple cases in the New York State courts about how to handle this. You can exempt yourself from the community system using grounds such as religious freedom. And then you will go to the courts and face things like, okay, the government will now withhold funding from you, and you file a response. Withholding funding is an attack on my religious freedom. Okay? And I'm not going to pretend to even open up a conversation as to what's right. It is complicated. And it's going on right now. The only way to isolate yourself from Dina de Mahuta Dina is basically to engage in subterfuge and
what happened to my hand?
and attempting to create a situation in which you don't have to play by the rules. Okay.
Rabbi, which court do you go to for when you want to, in the Jewish
Okay.
community?
Excuse me. I'm not going to go further with this. I can't.
Okay, all right.
I can. Okay.
Thank you.
I see Arthur and I see Steve.
We talked about many angles of law, but we did not consider what Torah says. Torah says an effective and durable law is the one that is found, not judicated.
Arthur, I'm not following you. I'm sorry.
I'll repeat it again. In Torah is specified that a law is not what you establish. It is what you will find it. In other words, after 50 years that I have used Queensboro in 59th Street, I know that during the early day, it is one way toward Manhattan, and during light is the other way. This is because it is necessity that it will be this.
I need a little bit of help. Help me understanding the question. If any of you can help me with this, I want to respond. My brain is not sufficiently active. I can say this, that no one really goes back to the Torah to get a final answer. No one, not even the most ultra-Orthodox, because everyone reads the Torah through their own lenses. And to say that it's written in the Torah is not sufficient, which sounds weird, to close a discussion. Because people read the Torah differently. Now, Arthur, did I respond to you?
No, I oppose to any law that contradicts science. Have this in your mind. In this situation, a law would be more effective and stays inactive if it is found out. In other words, you cannot make a law which is against nature.
Sure you can.
Well, you can't make a law that is against nature. God, I don't want to get drawn into an abortion conversation, but you do know, everyone here knows my feeling about this, and it's my feeling. It's not right or wrong. It's me, that almost all of the conversation in Congress and around the country in every state legislature trying to determine when life begins so that abortion could be or be not murder is based more on religion than on science. And they all claim science. And the motivation is almost always religion. And the struggles continue. Jewish law with regard to kosher slaughtering requires that the slaughtering take place in the most painless way possible. But for many practitioners of kashrut, the most painless way possible is the way we have been doing it, as opposed to what science may indicate is the least painful to the animal. And I know that Maya would indicate that the least painful way is not to slaughter at all. Okay, I get a support from that window. We hide our attacks on science. No, we use unspoken religious perspectives to attack public scientific issues. And that's a big problem in America today. And I'm going to move on just because we're moving out of time. Steve, quickly.
You said that it was traditional Jewish law, not just, for example, Reform Jews, that the law of where you are supersedes religious law, and that's what you are to obey. But the Haredi often take a different position. I'll give just one simple example, and the standard for when you can do this has been made tougher, but an employer can require employees to work on Saturday under certain circumstances. Those circumstances have recently been reduced by the Supreme Court, but they still exist. And the Haredi would say, you have to quit your job. So they seem to take a different position on that than what you are saying is kind of like longstanding traditional Jewish law for all.
Again, you know infinitely more about the law than I do, but I pretend a lot. With regard to, for example, requiring an employee to work on Shabbat, if yours is a religious institution, I believe that our country, our laws today permit you to fire or not hire, either way, someone who will not abide by your organization's Shabbat requirements. So if you're working for a Jewish agency and the Jewish agency is shut on Shabbat, that's great. If you're working for a non-Jewish agency and they're open on Shabbat, do they have the right not to hire you or to fire you if you refuse to work on Shabbat?
Sometimes.
Thank you. And that's really where we are.
And and what I'm saying is the Haredi say if that's the situation, you don't work on Shabbat because that's the local law. You quit. You don't apply for that job.
Okay, and there are those who, of course, Steve, will take a different approach and they'll apply and then litigate. And
they'll lose. It was actually just in front of the Supreme Court.
Yeah,
Under some circumstances, they will lose.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, I don't want to really, the bakery that indicates that it won't make a wedding cake for a same-sex couple. And there are all kinds of things. And then this case was decided when there wasn't even a case, it was theoretical. And the court still ruled.
That was judicial malpractice.
Okay, cool. Cool. Okay, thanks, Larry. And then Effie, and we got to move on.
Yeah, I mean, this issue of the conflict between civil and religious law is just so complicated and full of gray areas and exceptions, what have you, that it's hard to find a straight line rule that applies in all cases. But I do think there's a difference between complying with the rule by a private party, such as an employer, versus a government imposed law, and thinking about the difference between having to quit your job that's open on Shabbat versus a rule of general applicability that says you can't, as Sukasa says, wear a yarmulke, or for Native Americans, you can't partake of certain substances that would be illegal, but a central part of your religious ceremonies. So there's got to be a distinction there.
Yeah, I once thought of becoming Native American, but I found out that the procedure requires multi-generational change before did that. Those who practice with marijuana as part of the religious practice, boy, in the Yom Kippur, the Kaddish in Yom Kippur, it says God is La'ela above, and then on Yom Kippur, Rosh Hashanah says La'ela o La'ela. Well, the translation is getting higher and higher is a mitzvah, and I thought that marijuana would work, but I can't claim sufficient generations of Native American belief.
Yeah, don't tell my kids. But yeah, I mean, one of the biggest areas of complexity is determining whether someone truly believes in the religion that they are espousing as an excuse to have an exemption.
I'm not going to mention a highly publicized criminal who, when she found herself in jail, became kosher observing.
For sure.
Okay, but that happened about a month ago. It's real. If I am going to be stuck in this jail, I am kosher.
So what's your view of saying you're kosher just to get the better meal on the airplane?
That's illegal. That's just a choice.
For sure.
That they don't require that you keep kosher. They just give you.
Larry, I need to speak with you. You came up with something that penetrated my heart for many years in the 70s, 80s, when I would fly. I would always go kosher. And the only reason I went kosher was to help create a demand.
Yeah.
I mean, that was my motivation.
You also get fed first.
Well, yeah, but okay. But the real thing was I would eat what was then less than palatable food so as to create a demand so that others who really require it would have it. And I thought that was pretty good.
I think the right phrase here is thank you for your sacrifice.
Thank you. Thank you for your sacrifice.
We love you, Rabbi.
Yeah, right. Okay, Effie?
Yeah.
Right.
Many years ago, I used to, many years ago, I used to go to work on Saturday. The company never asked me to. But one day I was driving to work on a Saturday, And right in the middle of the freeway, I said, I should not be working on Saturday. So I got off the freeway, I went home, and I never went into work on Saturday again.
And now now you brought to mind the image of Paul on the road, who suddenly has a vision of Jesus as the risen Christ or whatever, and eventually launches Christianity. So the idea of having a religious experience on the highway goes back a long time. How do I say this? I support your religious conversion, and that's fine. Folks, I have to tell you, there is so much more. The rabbis ask in the sexual reading, if a decision by a court seems to violate Jewish law, what do you do? And then sometimes decisions are made to support the Sanhedrin, the court of its day, even if you don't agree. There are some things that we do to support institutions we believe in. And law is a funny business. It's a funny business. We'll have to get back to the rest of it next year. But you don't go up against institutions which are incredibly valuable but flawed. And how much do you attack flawed major institutions when it is to your benefit that the institution survive, even though some of its decisions are flawed? Very interesting conversation. And law is crucial to Jewish life. We're going to shift to Kaddish now, and at this point, I do not see Mitch, and that's okay. But we're going to start the Kaddish list now, and if when Mitch shows up, we will make an immediate stop for the sounding of shofar. Okay. Okay. Pardon?
Do you have a phone number for him?
I can't hear
Do
you.
you have a phone number for him?
Yes. But yes. Risa, I can't find it now. It's too much. I can't do that. Oh, yes, here it is. It says Mitch Dorf shofar right there. Okay. I have some additional names. So let me read the names of those who've passed away during the past month. Max Aronson, Rachel Blackman, Rachel Bat Naftali Vitzipora. Rachel is a close relative of a member of our Salam group, and we'll remember her. William Friedkin, Claire Goldstein, Sarah Rose Lafer, Rose Levine, Helen Mayer, Judy Michaels, Robert Bob Miller, George Morgan, Patsy Sultan, Gerald Norman Touche, and Gail Weiner. And let me, looking in here, neighbor Jim Bodman, Idea Fallen, we do, grandmother Sarah Cohn. Okay, yeah. Do we have any other names of those who have passed away recently? We go now. Oh, Mitch Dorf. There we are, Mitch Dorf. And ladies and gentlemen, the world's premier shofar blower. And we are going to do 4 blasts. Trua Shvorim Tekiah Trua. Am I doing it right, Mitch?
Yeah, can everyone hear me?
Yes,
Did you guys talk about what we're doing today and why?
please, Mitch, go forward. I always respond.
Great. Well, thank you for inviting me in, everyone. Yesterday started the first day of the month of Elul. And the month of Elul is the month that leads up to the high holidays in Rosh Hashanah, where we start the new year and the new calendar. It is the commandment to hear the shofar blast every day during the month of Elul. Since we don't have minions every day, and we have them on Shabbat, when we gather, and like with Rabbi Davids and this group here, or last night at Wilshire Boulevard, we blow the shofar then. Typically, you wouldn't blow shofar in the conservative Orthodox movements because I would have to carry the shofar, and that would violate Shabbat, so they don't blow on Shabbat. But since we're all here today, we're going to blow the shofar today. And so we'll do a little bit. We're going to do one of each calls. If you don't mind, the shofar service, I'll give you a little thing, by the way, is divided into 3 parts when you go to Rosh Hashanah services. Malchiyot, Zichronot, and Shofrot, each of which combined together have 30 calls. So there's 30 blasts. So there's a total of 90. In the Musaf service, there's actually an additional shofar service that has 110. So there's a total of 100, but we don't do that for whatever reasons. And Rabbi Davids could expand on why, but at least in the Reform movement, we don't do that. But in the shofar service, which you'll be at in 4 weeks, actually from today, you'll listen to the 3 different parts. And they're identical, but they have 30 calls each. And the calls range from the Tekiah, which is a single blast, the Shvarim, which is a combination of 3 blasts, Teruah, which is a minimum of 9, and then Tekiah, or at the very end, Tekiah Gedola, which is the same thing as the regular Tekiah, but it's just longer. And that's the exciting one that everyone wants to hear and see how long the Baal Tekiah will last before passing out. And hopefully that doesn't happen this year. It hasn't done it. For those of you have you guys know me and my son? Many of you guys? Okay. So Max is not with me. We will be together at Rosh Hashanah. The cool thing that when we do it together is I have this shofar, which was purchased for my wife's and I 15th wedding anniversary in Chicago. Our son's was purchased about 10 years later in the Shuk in Jerusalem. And what's really cool, and if you've heard us before, together we make this unique sound. It kind of sounds like a train whistle. If anyone is musically inclined here, his instrument, and this is all by nature, is almost a perfect third above mine. So do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. Right? So I play the do, he plays the mi, do, re, mi, and then I play sa, do, so, and do. So I go do, so, do, which is the root 5th octave, and he stays on the mi, and that makes a minor chord. And that's why it sounds so cool. But it's just a little flat from a minor chord, so it has a little dissonance to it. What happens is we do that during Malchiyot and Shofrot, where we praise God and triumph of God. But during Zichronot, which is remembrance, Max plays his root 5th octave, and I play my 3rd, and all of a sudden we go from a D flat major chord to a G minor chord. And minor chords, if anyone's in music, minor chords are more reflective. There's a little bit of somberness to them. And we do that during the Zichronot, the second part of the shofar service. And while many people don't catch it, but there's something different to our sound during that part. We've been doing that the last few years. We figured that out a couple years ago. But the cool thing is that there are these 2 instruments, because this is an instrument, remember, this was used not just for Rosh Hashanah services, this was to call people together. It's time for the community, the camps to come together, and something was going to happen. This is, a form of communication. I mean, this goes back Vikings and, way back in time, but this is now used as our symbolic, Yom HaTruah. What is Yom HaTruah? Rosh Hashanah isn't necessarily, Rosh Hashanah is never mentioned in the Torah. The day of Rosh Hashanah is actually Yom HaTruah, Yom, day of the blast. That's Rosh Hashanah. And the commandment isn't to play the shofar. The commandment and the mitzvah is to hear it. And that's what I and my ex and I have been so honored and blessed to bring to last Friday night, to you this morning, and then on Rosh Hashanah when we do it together. That we're able to be that vehicle to help you fulfill that mitzvah and that commandment to hear the shofar during this month of Elul, and then on Rosh Hashanah, and then the final blast during Ne'ilah to end Yom Kippur and those 8 days. So in any case, that's a little bit of a story. I hope I didn't go too long on that. A little bit of education. Who knows? Maybe I'll come up with some more stuff. Or is this the same group every time, or is it changed?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Wow.
Totally
So I shot my whole load there on everything. I'll have to come up with more next time. But yeah,
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Sure. Any questions someone might have about the shofar or the shofar service, or you can think about them and ask next week too.
Yeah,
The hills are alive with music.
We'll do that, and I think we should go to the calls now.
Okay.
If we can.
So what Rabbi Davids is going to do, he's going to give basically the first stanza of it, which he's going to call Tekiah, the single blast. He's then going to go Shavarim Truah, and you'll hear 3 and then 9, and then he'll give me one more Tekiah, and that's how we finish it. Just give you a little taste for that big day on Rosh Hashanah. Okay? Let's see. Let me move this so I can see me better.
This was the reason why Zoom was created.
All right, there you go. You hear that, right?
Ready.
Go ahead, Rabbi.
Tekiah. Shavarim Truah. Tekiah. Thank you so very much, Mitch. Thank you.
My pleasure.
Shabbat Shalom. And I got to get fingers up and all that. And we're going to go on. We have to with Kaddish. But Mitch, thank you. We'll see you next week.
Stay dry, everyone.
Shabbat
you.
Shabbat Shalom.
That's cool. Yes. That's cool. That's very cool. Yard sites that occurred during the past week: Eva Ackerman, Aaron Arnold, Irving Bassman, Andrew Baum, Charles Bendit, Joyce Benfield, Nesta Berger, Harold Burrowfine, Ann Bernstein, Irene Coden Black, Brennan Bastani, Doris Calderon, Linda Lee Chesler, Earl Cohn, Bernard Cohn, Alvern Edgar Cohn, Jenny Cohen, Henrietta Darlin, Zena Davis, Maury Dickman, Estelle Drexler, Martin Drexler, Irving Eigler, Benny Epstein, Max Feidelson, Sophie Feldman, Sarita Fenton, Millard Fleischer, Edna Florence, Ben Frankel. I can turn this page. Maybe not. Irving Friedman, Sonia Friedman, Francis Glass, Sadie Greenberg, Morris Grossberg, Ernst Hacker, Betty Lois Halper, Elizabeth Hecht, Edward Hyman, Myra Holtzman, Marion Horn, Norman Jacobson, Kathy Jacobson, Johanna Kahn, Hannah Kaplan, David Harry Karsh, Jack Kent, Sarah Cohn, Denise Helen Corman, Shirley Cotton, Roger Cosberg, Jean Kunish, Raymond Lackman, William Lerner, Harry Levison, Ellis Levy, Esther Levy, Chuck Levy, Florence Lewin, Edward Lewis, Leonard Lindy, Leon Leutman, Dolores Luisa Lopez, Sandy Lockheim, Ethel Lozabnik, Sandra Lurie, Jerry Lushing, Justine Mandelbaum, Helen Miller, Bessie Miller Bodick, Leonard Mills, Ruth Moger, Marge Moore, Robert Neal Morgan, Homa Navid Bawish, Shamil Niku Hamadani, Arthur Nozick, Ruth Ornstein, Ellie Persky, Charles Phillips, Lawrence Miller, Michael Power, Lawrence Michael Powell, Betty Pridovich, Thelma Pastor Rubin, Emily Richards, Rona Rose Richmond, Morris Rubin, David Rosenthal, Mary Rosenthal, Jane Rothenberg, Harold Royce, Francoise Ruddy, Geraldine Salmonson, Joseph Sandler, Walter Schoenfield, Jack Schuster, Irving Schwartz. Soletta Schwartz, Larry Searman, Barbara Irene Scheller, Marty Siegel, Samuel Sills, Jacob Silver, Millicent Small, William Smerling, Dina Sod, Isaac Ullman, Molly Wagner, Julia Wasserman, Clifford Weitz, Charles Wessler, Henry Wolf Jr., Bud Yorkin, William Young. If there are other names to be remembered at this time, please speak their names aloud or in your hearts. We bear in mind as well the names of those who died in defense of the state of Israel, those who died in defense of the United States of America, those who died through senseless acts of terror, those who have no one to say Kaddish for them, and now we add those who died through the horrible disaster that occurred on Hawaii. Yitgadal, Bi'almad, Yibra Fidrute, Bi'amlich Malachute, V'chayechon Ovimechon, V'chayedechol Beit Yisrael, Ba'agala Uvizmachim, V'imru Amen.
Amen.
Yehi Shmei Rabba
Lord.
Le'olam Le'olmei Alaya. Yitbarak V'yitba'ar V'yitba'ar V'yitramah V'yitnaseh V'yitadar V'yitaleh V'yitalal Shemei Dekudshah V'richu La'ela Min Kol Birchata V'shirata Tushbachata V'nechamata Da'amiran V'alma V'imru Amen.
Amen.
Yehi Shlomo Rabba Min Shemaya V'chayim Alein Yel Kol Yisrael V'imru
Oh, Israel, Beru, Amen.
Oseh Shalom B'imromav Hu Yaseh
Say,
Aleinu V'Yel Kol
Oh,
Yisrael
Israel,
V'imru
Beru,
Amen.
Amen.
May God, who makes peace in our high places, make peace in our hearts, make peace in our homes, make peace in the household of Israel, make peace among all the families and nations of earth, and let us say,
Amen.
Amen.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom, everybody. Thank you, thank you, thank you. We had shofar blowing today, right?
Yeah.
How was that?
Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom, everybody. Have a wonderful, wonderful week.
Shabbat shalom.
Thank you. Love you. Pray I get my apartment. God.